welcome to GenLab. In this video, we begin something special, a full release series where each dinosaur gets its moment to shine. From powerful predators to peaceful giants, we'll introduce them one by one with a short breakdown of their size, behavior, and what made them unique in their prehistoric world. Spinosaurus is one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs ever discovered, reaching lengths of up to 15 meters. Its massive sail towering above its back made it one of the most recognizable creatures of the prehistoric world. With a long crocodile-like snout and sharp conical teeth, it was perfectly adapted for catching fish and hunting near water. Unlike most predators, Spinosaurus could move with ease both on land and in rivers, making it a truly unique apex predator. Spinoraptor is one of the most dangerous hybrid predators ever created, a perfect fusion of power, speed, and intelligence. Combining the massive strength and size of Spinosaurus with the agility and cunning of Velociraptor, this creature is built for absolute domination. Its long, powerful body allows it to move with surprising speed, while its sharp claws and deadly jaws can tear through almost anything in its path. Unlike most predators, Spinoraptor doesn't rely on brute force alone. It hunts strategically, tracking its prey, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Stegosaurus is one of the most recognizable dinosaurs of all time, known for the large plates along its back and the sharp spikes on its tail. Despite its intimidating appearance, it was a peaceful herbivore, feeding on low-growing plants. Reaching lengths of up to 9 meters, this dinosaur had a surprisingly small brain compared to its body size. Its plates may have been used for display or temperature regulation, while its tail, armed with deadly spikes, served as a powerful defense against predators. Slow but well-protected, Stegosaurus relied on its natural armor to survive in a dangerous prehistoric world. Metriacanthosaurus was a fast and agile predator that lived during the Jurassic period. Though not the largest carnivore, it relied on speed, balance, and sharp senses to hunt its prey. Growing up to around 8 meters in length, it had a lean, muscular body built for quick attacks. Its name means moderately spined lizard, referring to the small spines along its back. With powerful jaws and curved teeth, it could easily catch and hold struggling prey. Unlike giant predators, Metriacanthosaurus survived by being efficient and adaptable, using precision instead of brute force. In its world, speed meant survival, and hesitation meant death. Tyrannosaurus rex was one of the most dominant predators to ever exist. Standing up to 12 meters long and weighing several tons, it ruled the late Cretaceous world with unmatched power. Its massive skull was built like a crushing machine, equipped with banana-shaped teeth designed to tear through bone as easily as flesh. Despite its enormous size, T-Rex had strong, muscular legs that allowed it to move with surprising speed over short distances. It didn't need to chase for long. One successful attack was often enough. Its tiny arms may look almost useless, but they didn't define it. The true weapon of Tyrannosaurus was its bite, one of the strongest bite forces ever measured in the animal kingdom, capable of delivering absolute destruction in a single strike. Apatosaurus was one of the largest land animals to ever exist, reaching lengths of up to 23 meters and weighing dozens of tons. Its massive body was supported by thick pillar-like legs that carried it slowly but steadily across prehistoric landscapes. Despite its intimidating size, Apatosaurus was a peaceful herbivore. It spent most of its time feeding on vast amounts of vegetation needed to sustain such an enormous body. Its long neck gave it access to both high treetops and low-growing plants, allowing it to survive in a variety of environments. Its powerful tail played an important role in balance, helping stabilize its huge frame. Some scientists also believe it could have been used as a defensive weapon against predators, capable of delivering strong strikes if threatened. Although it moved slowly and lacked natural armor, its sheer size was its greatest defense. Very few predators would dare challenge an adult Apatosaurus, knowing the risk was far too great. Scorpios rex is a brutal and highly unstable hybrid created without balance or true control. It is fast, unpredictable, and driven entirely by instinct, rage, and aggression. Its body is covered in rough armor-like skin, and it carries deadly claws and razor-sharp teeth capable of tearing through almost anything. It doesn't hunt with strategy, it reacts violently to everything around it. There is no calm, no hesitation, no mercy. Scorpios Rex is not just a predator, it is pure chaos in living form. Chungkingosaurus was a small to medium-sized herbivorous dinosaur that lived during the late Jurassic period. It belonged to the Stegosaur family, known for their distinctive plates and defensive tails. Unlike massive predators, Chungkingosaurus relied on protection rather than aggression. Its body was covered with rows of bony plates and spikes, helping it defend itself from attackers. It moved slowly through ancient forests, feeding on low-growing plants and vegetation. Though not large compared to other dinosaurs, its armor gave it a strong chance of survival in a dangerous world. Chungkingosaurus proves that even the smaller giants of the Jurassic had their own way of surviving. Cryolophosaurus was a powerful carnivorous dinosaur that lived in Antarctica during the early Jurassic period. It stood out for the unique crest on its head, giving it a distinctive and intimidating appearance. Despite living in a cold and harsh environment, it was an active predator, using speed and sharp teeth to hunt smaller dinosaurs. Its strong legs allowed it to move quickly across rough terrain. Cryolophosaurus proves that even in extreme conditions, life found a way to dominate. Sinoceratops was a large herbivorous dinosaur that lived during the late Cretaceous period. It belonged to the Ceratopsian family, known for their horns and powerful skulls. Its most striking feature was the large frill on the back of its head, decorated with unique horn-like structures. This wasn't just for show, it likely helped with defense and species recognition. With a strong body and a powerful beak for tearing plants, Sinoceratops was well adapted to survive in a dangerous world filled with predators. Even without aggression, it stood its ground with pure strength and defense. Nodosaurus was a heavily armored herbivorous dinosaur that lived during the late Cretaceous period. It was not built for speed or aggression, but for pure defense and survival. Its entire body was covered in thick bony plates, nodules, and spikes that formed a natural armor layer from head to tail. This protection made it extremely difficult for predators to bite through or find weak points. Even large carnivores would struggle to take it down. With a low, wide body and short legs, Nodosaurus moved slowly through its environment, feeding peacefully on low-growing plants. It did not need to run or fight. Its armor was its greatest weapon. Iguanodon was one of the earliest discovered dinosaurs and a successful herbivore of the early Cretaceous period. It could grow up to 10 meters long and was capable of walking on both 2 and 4 legs, making it highly adaptable in different environments. Its most distinctive feature was the sharp thumb spike, which may have been used for defense or breaking through tough vegetation. Along with a strong beak and rows of teeth, it was well suited for eating a variety of plants. Ceratosaurus was a medium-sized carnivorous dinosaur from the late Jurassic period. It was a fast and aggressive predator, known for the distinctive horn on its snout and rows of sharp teeth built for tearing flesh. Unlike larger predators, Ceratosaurus relied on agility and opportunistic hunting, often targeting smaller dinosaurs or scavenging when needed. Its flexible body and strong legs made it a capable and efficient hunter in its environment. Though not the largest threat of its time, Ceratosaurus was still a dangerous and persistent predator that survived through speed, intelligence, and aggression. Atrociraptor was a highly aggressive and intelligent predator from the late Cretaceous period. Smaller than many of its relatives, it made up for its size with speed, precision, and relentless hunting behavior. Built for pursuit, it had strong legs and sharp curved teeth designed to grip and tear flesh. Atrociraptor often relied on pack tactics, using coordination and strategy to overwhelm its prey. Fast, focused, and extremely dangerous, it was a predator that never hesitated once it locked onto a target. Microceratus was a small herbivorous dinosaur from the late Cretaceous period. Despite its tiny size, it survived by staying alert and moving quickly through dense vegetation. It had a light, agile body and a beak adapted for feeding on low-growing plants. Its small size made it an easy target, so it likely relied on camouflage, speed, and group behavior to avoid predators. Though not powerful or intimidating, Microceratus shows that even the smallest dinosaurs had effective ways to survive in a world full of giants. Pyroraptor was a fast and intelligent predator from the late Cretaceous period. As a member of the Dromaeosaur family, it shared traits with other raptor-like dinosaurs: speed, agility, and sharp hunting instincts. It had a lightweight body, strong legs, and curved claws designed for gripping and tearing prey. Its feathers suggest it was both agile and well-adapted to changing environments, possibly even cold climates. Pyroraptor likely hunted small animals or scavenged when necessary, relying on quick strikes and precision rather than brute strength. Fast, alert, and efficient, it was a predator built for opportunity. Therizinosaurus was one of the most unusual dinosaurs to ever exist. Despite its massive size, it was a herbivore, not a predator. Its most striking feature was its enormous claws, some of the longest of any land animal, reaching up to a meter in length. These claws were likely used for pulling down vegetation, but they could also serve as a powerful defense against predators. With a bulky body, long neck, and feathered appearance, Therizinosaurus looked unlike anything else in its time. Slow but intimidating, it didn't need speed to survive. Its sheer presence and deadly claws were more than enough to keep threats away. Velociraptor was a small but highly intelligent predator from the late Cretaceous period. Despite its size, it was fast, agile, and extremely dangerous. Its most iconic feature was the curved claw on each foot, used to grip and slash its prey with precision. Combined with sharp teeth and quick reflexes, it made Velociraptor a highly effective hunter. It likely relied on speed, strategy, and possibly teamwork to take down targets much larger than itself. Archaeornithomimus was a fast and lightweight dinosaur built for speed. With long legs and a slender body, it could quickly escape danger across open terrain. Its toothless beak suggests it was an omnivore, feeding on plants, insects, and small animals. Rather than fighting predators, it relied on agility and awareness to survive. In its world, speed was everything. Chasmosaurus was a large herbivorous dinosaur from the late Cretaceous period, known for its impressive frill and horns. Its massive skull was one of its most distinctive features, with a wide shield-like frill that may have been used for display, defense, or communication within its species. Though not as aggressive as predators, Chasmosaurus was far from defenseless. Its strong body and facial horns could deter attackers, making it a difficult target. It likely lived in herds, feeding on plants and relying on group protection to survive. Calm but powerful, Chasmosaurus proved that defense and unity were key to survival. Troodon was a small but highly intelligent dinosaur from the late Cretaceous period. It had large eyes, suggesting excellent night vision, and a sharp mind that made it one of the smartest dinosaurs. With quick movements and sharp teeth, it hunted small prey with precision. Rather than relying on strength, Troodon used awareness and strategy to survive. Muttaburrasaurus was a large herbivorous dinosaur that lived during the early Cretaceous period. It is best known for its unusual rounded snout, which may have been used to produce sounds for communication or to attract others of its kind. With a strong, muscular body and powerful legs, it could move steadily across vast landscapes in search of food. Its beak and rows of teeth allowed it to process tough vegetation with ease. Although it lacked heavy armor or horns, Muttaburrasaurus likely relied on awareness, size, and herd behavior to protect itself from predators. Living in groups would have increased its chances of survival. Calm, adaptable, and resilient, it was well equipped to thrive in a constantly changing prehistoric world. Ankylosaurus was one of the most heavily armored dinosaurs to ever exist. Living during the late Cretaceous period, it was built like a walking tank, covered in thick bony plates and spikes that protected it from head to tail. Its low, wide body made it incredibly stable, while its tough armor made it nearly impossible for predators to penetrate. But its most powerful weapon was its massive tail club, a solid bone structure capable of delivering devastating blows. A single swing could break bones and force even the largest predators to back away. Despite its intimidating defenses, Ankylosaurus was a peaceful herbivore, feeding on low-growing plants and vegetation. It didn't need speed or aggression to survive. Its protection was more than enough. In a world ruled by powerful predators, Ankylosaurus stood its ground, proving that defense could be stronger than attack. Schienzosaurus was a slender member of the Tyrannosaur family from the late Cretaceous period. Unlike the massive Tyrannosaurus rex, it had a long, narrow snout, giving it a more lightweight and agile appearance. This suggests it may have hunted smaller, faster prey, relying on precision and speed rather than raw power. Its strong legs allowed it to move efficiently while tracking targets. In a world of giants, Schienzosaurus survived by being fast, specialized, and precise. It proved that evolution doesn't always create bigger predators. Sometimes it creates smarter ones. Diplodocus was one of the longest dinosaurs to ever walk the Earth, reaching lengths of up to 25 to 30 meters. Despite its enormous size, it was a peaceful herbivore that moved slowly across ancient landscapes in search of vegetation. Its incredibly long neck allowed it to feed over wide areas without moving its massive body too much, while its whip-like tail may have been used for balance or even defense against predators. Diplodocus had a relatively small head compared to its body, with peg-like teeth designed for stripping leaves rather than chewing tough plants. It relied on quantity, eating vast amounts of vegetation every day to sustain its giant frame. Even though it lacked armor or weapons, its sheer size was its greatest protection. Very few predators would risk attacking such a massive creature. Diplodocus shows that in nature, survival doesn't always come from strength or speed. Sometimes it comes from scale and patience. Moros intrepidus was a small but fast tyrannosaur that lived during the early Cretaceous period. Despite its size, it was built for speed, with long legs and a lightweight body designed for quick movement and pursuit. It likely hunted small animals or scavenged, relying on agility and sharp instincts rather than brute force. Moros intrepidus represents the early evolution of tyrannosaurs, small, fast, and just beginning their rise to dominance. Stegosaurus was one of the most iconic dinosaurs of the Jurassic period, instantly recognizable by the large plates running along its back and the powerful spikes on its tail. Despite its intimidating appearance, it was a peaceful herbivore, feeding on low-growing plants. Its small head and simple teeth meant it had to eat constantly to sustain its large body. The plates on its back may have helped with display, temperature regulation, or species recognition, while its famous tail, known as a thagomizer, was a deadly defensive weapon capable of delivering powerful blows to predators. Slow-moving but heavily protected, Stegosaurus relied on armor rather than speed. Most predators would think twice before attacking such a well-defended creature. Utahraptor was one of the largest and most powerful raptor dinosaurs of the early Cretaceous period. Much bigger than its relatives, it combined size with speed and deadly precision. Armed with a massive curved claw on each foot, it was built for ambush and close-range attacks. Strong legs and a muscular body made it an efficient and relentless hunter. Utahraptor proves that raptors were not just small predators, some were true giants of their kind. Pachycephalosaurus was a unique herbivorous dinosaur from the late Cretaceous period, instantly recognizable by its thick dome-shaped skull. This massive bone structure could reach several inches in thickness, making it one of the most heavily reinforced heads in the dinosaur world. It likely used its dome for headbutting contests, either to establish dominance or compete for mates, similar to modern animals that engage in combat displays. Despite its strange appearance, Pachycephalosaurus was a relatively small bipedal dinosaur, moving quickly on strong hind legs while feeding on plants, seeds, and fruits. Its agility helped it avoid predators, while its thick skull provided an extra layer of defense. In a dangerous prehistoric world, it survived through a combination of speed, toughness, and one of the most unusual adaptations in nature.
We are pleased to welcome Indominus Rex to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Pyroraptor to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Spinosaurus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Stygimoloch to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Metriacanthosaurus to the park. Ladies Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Dimetrodon to the park. We are pleased to welcome a Dilophosaurus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Dinosaurs to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Microceratus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome an Ornithomimus to the park. gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome... Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Stegoceratops to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Dinosaurs to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Suchomimus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Spinoceratops to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Changosaurus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome an Allura Titan to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Lystrosaurus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Gallimimus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Dinosaurs to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome an Acrocanthosaurus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Utah raptor to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a velociraptor to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Deinonychus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Triceratops to the park. pleased to welcome an Ankylosaurus to the park. Acrocanthosaurus to the park. and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome an Atrociraptor to the park. To the park. We are pleased to welcome a Dimetrodon to the park. Gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Giganotosaurus to the park. We are pleased to welcome the Carnotaurus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome the Spinosaurus to the park. We are pleased to welcome a Eutyrannus to the park. We are pleased to welcome the Spinoraptor to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Therizinosaurus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Changosaurus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Majungasaurus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Suchomimus to the park. To the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome an Atrociraptor to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome an Allura Titan to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome an Iguanodon to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Dimetrodon to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome an Albertosaurus to the park. We are pleased to welcome a Metriacanthosaurus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Scorpius Rex to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Spinosaurus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Triceratops to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Patagotitan to the park. gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Stegosaurus to the park. We are pleased to welcome an Dinosaurus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Tyrannosaurus Rex to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome Baryonyx to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome an Ornithomimus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Giganotosaurus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Lokiceratops to the park. gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome an Archaeornithomimus to the park. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome